I think we have a good group of attendees, so we will go ahead and start. And again, welcome to the Texas eSeaGrant College Program RFP fiscal year 2022-2024 full proposal workshop. We will be led with our Director of Texas eSeaGrant, Dr. Pamela Plotkin, and secondly, our Senior Associate Director with Texas eSeaGrant, Cynthia Lyle, also known as Cindy Lyle. She is our Extension Program Leader and will lead the second half of the presentation for learning how to integrate research with Extension. And my name is Mia Zwolinski. I'm Assistant Director for Research and Fiscal Administration here at Texas eSeaGrant. I've communicated with an awful lot of you, and it's been a great working relationship that we've had getting this competition going since December, the release of the RFP and the pre-proposals in January. And my video is not working, so you see a Texas eSeaGrant image instead. And so the goals for today, from 1 to 4, is to go over how to develop a competitive full proposal. We'll also learn more about the Texas eSeaGrant strategic plan, focus area goals, and the research priorities that were established for the RFP. We will review the full proposal preparation and submission requirements, and then I will go over eSeaGrant system full proposal overview and how to screenshots. We'll then go into assisting you with integrating your proposed research with Extension, outreach and education. And lastly, we'll go over questions you have. We'll have a question and answer session at the end. So please jot down your questions as you can and then save them towards the end. We're recording the webinar and we'll make it publicly available on our website. Again, save your questions for the end. We'll leave time. When you want to ask a question, you can click on the hand icon to be recognized, and we will unmute you, and you can either proceed by asking and or typing your question. So with that, I am going to unshare my screen so that our director, Dr. Pamela Plotkin, will share her screen for her presentation. And we have 45 participants. This is exciting.
Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted that you could join us today for our full proposal workshop, and want to congratulate all of you for making it through the first stage of our multi-stage proposal review process. You've made it through the pre-proposal phase, and now we're going to talk to you today about the full proposal process and help you develop more competitive full proposals. And my computer doesn't seem to want to start my PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. Okay, beautiful. So, so typically we do this full proposal workshop in person, and we don't have that opportunity this year of COVID. And so we're going to do as much as we can, as best as we can, using Zoom. And thanks for bearing with us as we try to adapt to what really should be an in-person workshop into a remote experience. So So the goals for today, as Mia said, are to help PIs develop competitive research proposals. We're going to talk about what we and the reviewers who are going to review your full proposals want to see in your full proposals. We're going to introduce you to the research extension model and provide ideas for integration, and that's the second half of this full proposal workshop. We're going to introduce you to our Texas eSeaGrant extension team. And this very last bullet is the one that we're not going to be able to do much of today. In the past, we have spent time working one-on-one with PIs to expand your outcomes, connect you with coastal communities and their needs, develop robust partnerships, and then ultimately enrich the impacts and accomplishments of the research that you do. So I encourage you to reach out to us after this webinar today. We're going to introduce you to our extension team. We encourage you to reach out to individuals you may want to work with and may want to just talk to and bounce ideas off of after this webinar, because they have a lot of connections into their communities and counties and cities, and can help connect you with some of the issues, as well as many of the people and the organizations and stakeholders and partners that we work with regularly. So those are the goals today. And my part is going to be to help you conceptualize what it is that we want to fund. And so if you attended the pre-proposal webinar we did, this is the exact same slide that I showed during the pre-proposal webinar. And this is done primarily because this is the one question that PIs ask me every year. What does Texas eSeaGrant really want to fund? And so we don't want that to be a mystery. We want to be really clear about what it is that we're looking for. And so I'm going to go through each of these bullets in a little bit more detail and try to add some things that perhaps I didn't add in during the pre-proposal webinar, because now I'm going to be focusing on your full proposal. And so the pre-proposals were brief and didn't give you a lot of room to expand or elaborate. And so the full proposals do give you that luxury. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how you should address some of these things that we and the technical reviewers are going to be looking for. So you'll see this slide again. So the first bullet is that Texas eSeaGrant needs to support research that aligns with its strategic plan goals. And here you see a picture of the cover of our strategic plan, which goes from 2018 to 2023. And typically our strategic plans are only 4-year plans, but our National eSeaGrant office asked us to extend our current 4-year plan by 2 years. And so if you have an old version, it doesn't have 2023 on it, on the cover, but our new version does have 2023 on the cover now. It is basically unchanged. The contents of this plan are basically unchanged from the previous version. So should you have the previous version, you can still refer to that. And if you don't have any version, I encourage you to download it from our website so that you can get a better understanding of what is in our strategic plan, and make sure that you're developing your proposal so that it is clear to all the reviewers that your proposed research aligns with our strategic plan. So one comment about our strategic plan is that we develop this with input from the public, and every 4 years we send out a survey and we ask the public to tell us what are the most important coastal and marine issues in Texas. And we solicit that input. We roll it all up into our strategic plan. And then we fit it into categories that we call focus areas. And our focus areas align with the National eSeaGrant Office's focus areas, so that all the eSeaGrant programs in all the coastal and Great Lakes states in the United States have the same focus areas. And those are sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, healthy coastal ecosystems, STEM literacy and workforce development, and resilient communities and economies. And you'll see those in an upcoming slide. So all the eSeaGrant programs have the same focus areas, but we have different strategic plans because each of our plans are aligned with what our state needs are. And we get that information from the public. So the last point I want to make, which is the third bullet on the left-hand side, is that many years ago, eSeaGrant programs didn't have strategic plans, and they got money and they just had to spend it, and they weren't really held accountable for doing anything other than spending their money. And the rules changed significantly about 10 years ago. We now have to have strategic plans. Our strategic plans have to align with the National eSeaGrant Strategic Plan, which in turn aligns with NOAA's strategic plan. And we are held accountable for making progress on that strategic plan, achieving the goals that we lay out in that plan. And so accountability is really important, because if we're not accountable, then we could lose funding, partial funding, or complete funding. And so what's really important to understand for researchers is that your research is part of our evaluation. So we're evaluated every year. We're also evaluated every 4 years to determine whether we've achieved the goals in our strategic plan. And so if we're supporting research that's not helping us achieve the goals in our strategic plan, then we're not doing a good job. And so our research funds all have to help us achieve the goals in the strategic plan, just like our other funding, which goes to support our extension team. And so this is why this is so important for us. This is not your typical strategic plan that academic units develop and then they go on a shelf or in a drawer and you pull it out maybe once every 5 or 10 years. We're held accountable. And so any research we fund becomes part of our annual evaluation, becomes part of our site review and 4-year evaluation. So that's why we are looking to support research that fits with this plan, and why we're using such a very fine lens to make sure that your research projects are going to help us achieve those goals. So let's take a look at some of those goals. I told you one of our focus areas is resilient communities and economies. And we have 2 goals under resilient communities and economies. And during the pre-proposal phase, we asked you to select a focus area and goal that your pre-proposal was best aligned with. And we didn't ask you to tell us a lot about how your research aligns with that specific focus area and goal. In the full proposal, you're going to want to spend a lot of time laying out for the reviewers why your proposed research fits that goal. How is it going to achieve that goal through your research efforts? And so you take a look at goal number 1, coastal communities and industries increase their resilience to natural and man-made hazards to minimize economic disruption. Well, if you're a researcher and let's say you're going to develop a new way for coastal communities to assess their vulnerability, which will ultimately lead to them increasing their resilience to hurricanes, then that would be the type of research project that would help us achieve goal 1. And that's what we're looking for in your full proposals, is to tell your story, to help draw a very solid line between your research and one of our goals. And so when you get to the full proposal review stage, there are actually 2 parts. Your proposal, full proposal, is going to go to 3 ad hoc reviewers who are experts in the field. And then those reviews and your proposal are going to be given to a technical review panel. And the technical review panel will review your proposal, they will review the ad hoc reviews, and they will be the group of reviewers that decide who Texas eSeaGrant is going to support in this next cycle. And so it's really important to understand that some of these reviewers are going to be scientists. Some of these reviewers are going to be extension professionals. And some of these reviewers may be more policy management, resource management types of folks. And so if you're thinking with just a scientist hat on, you may not be communicating to a broader audience of reviewers that are going to be reading your proposal. So make sure that when you're writing that full proposal, that you're thinking about who your reviewers are going to be, because they're going to be a mix of folks who have solid science backgrounds and others who have science backgrounds but may not be as current as, say, a faculty member in a tenure track position. So think about that when you're trying to communicate to the reviewers why your research aligns with a specific goal in our strategic plan. So, so that's 2 of our goals in 1 focus area. Here are 2 other focus areas that we are supporting in this RFP. First one up at the top is sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, and goals 3 and 4 are listed there for you. And then the last focus area is healthy coastal ecosystems, and goal 5 and 6 are listed there for you. So again, make sure you are telling the reviewers how your research is going to achieve one of these goals in that 12 pages that you have for the narrative of your proposal. You also have 1 whole page to provide a summary of your research, and I encourage you to include it in the summary as well. But you can go into a lot more detail in those 12 pages of your narrative. Okay, so moving along, Texas eSeaGrant wants to support research that responds to the research priorities that we have identified on page 2 of the RFP for this funding opportunity. And so if you look at our 3 focus areas, sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, healthy coastal ecosystems, and resilient communities and economies, we had listed several priorities under each one of those. And so looking up the top, oyster aquaculture, recreational fisheries, seafood traceability, quality, and safety were 3 of the research priorities that we asked to see under sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. And in the pre-proposal, we asked you to identify which of the research priorities your proposed research fit into. And I'm going to be real honest with you and tell you that we got a lot of great pre-proposals. We also got a lot of pre-proposals that did not clearly align with these research priorities. And so those pre-proposals didn't make it to the full proposal stage. And so make sure that your research that you're proposing clearly fits within one of these research priorities, and that you are spending time in both your project summary page and your 12 pages of narrative telling the reviewers why. So for example, you know, some folks saw under healthy coastal ecosystems that we were interested in colonial waterbird rookery island restoration. And we had a couple of people who submitted proposals focused on colonial waterbirds. Well, that particular research priority was not to study the colonial waterbirds independent of the rookery island restoration. And so make sure you fully understand what the research priority is and that your research fits clearly within that research priority, and make sure that you clearly articulate that in the full proposal. So research priorities are really important. This is a slide you're going to see again in the second half of this presentation, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this now because Cindy Lyle and her team of extension professionals are going to tell you everything you know about integrating research and extension. All I'm going to tell you at this point in time is that we want to see you integrate research and extension, and you're going to have to hang on to the second half of this webinar to learn how to do that elegantly, and so please stay tuned for that. So you're going to see this again, but just know that that's really important to us. That's what separates eSeaGrant funding opportunities from just about every other funding opportunity. And we've got extension staff who can help you understand and then help you develop your proposal so that you have a more competitive full proposal to submit to the competition. So I encourage you to hang out for that part. Texas eSeaGrant supports outcome-oriented research. And so if you attended the pre-proposal webinar, you saw this same slide. These are examples of what we mean by outcome-oriented research. Now, we don't require that you submit a research proposal that has all of these different outcomes. And we're not going to tell you that we want to see at least 5 of these different outcomes in your proposal. Every outcome is specific to a research project. And so if you have the kind of research project that you're proposing that could or will impact regulatory action, then that would be the type of outcome-oriented research you would be doing. And that would be something that you would identify in your proposal as one or more of the broader impacts of the research. So if you read the RFP, we're looking for intellectual merit of your research. We're also looking for broader impacts. And so the outcome-oriented research fits within the broader impacts. And we want your research to be actionable. We want it to be usable. We don't want you to publish a peer-reviewed journal and then have it sit in a journal for eternity. We want you to do something with it. We want it to benefit the communities. We want it to benefit the natural resources. We want to benefit policy. We want to hopefully engage people like students and adults and others in the research, if your research lends itself to those kinds of activities and outcomes. So this is a whole suite of different things that we have seen over the years, that we have supported over the years. There may be other types of outcomes that can result from the research, and we're open to all types, but there has to be some broader impact of the research, similar to the broader impact criterion that the National Science Foundation requires with its awards. Okay, so this year we have also added something new to be more explicit about what we want to see and what we want to support. And this ties directly into those outcomes. And so in the past, we would receive some great full proposals, and they would say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and it's going to benefit the public, or it's going to benefit this community, or it's going to benefit Texas Parks and Wildlife. And we would not have a letter of support from the people that it was going to benefit, or the organizations it was going to benefit. And so we never were really sure whether the end users a PI identified had actually been involved in the development of the proposal, or had actually communicated with the researcher to let him or her know that that was something that they needed. And so we're being real direct this year and asking you to make sure you identify to us and to the reviewers who are the end users of your proposed research, who needs your data, and how are they going to use it. And we want to see letters of support from those end users of your research. So if you are coming up with a research project that is going to, say, go out in Corpus Christi Bay and sample the abundance of a commercially fished species or a recreationally fished species, and the data that you collect and the results of your research are going to have an impact on the way Texas Parks and Wildlife manages the fishery in Corpus Christi Bay, it's a good idea to have a conversation with somebody at Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and to get a letter of support from them justifying why your research is important and how it's going to be used and its value to the management of the resource. So that's just one example. And I've got a lot of examples here on this page. You could have a local community as your end user, where you may be helping them develop a resilience plan based on the research that you are doing. Could be a state agency. And I just gave you an example of that. Could be the public. You may be doing something that's going to improve public health and safety. Maybe you're studying rip currents or harmful algal blooms or some other problem that impacts public health and safety. Could be driving on the beach. Just about anything is fair game if it impacts the public and it's in the coastal or marine realm. Could be a non-governmental organization, or it could be industry. And we have a lot of partnerships with industry here in Texas and can connect you with industry should you need to be connected to someone from industry or NGOs or the public or state agencies or local communities. And that's one of the real strengths of our extension team, is that they live and work in coastal communities from Beaumont down to Brownsville. They have significant trust relationships in those communities. They have many stakeholders and partners. They know what the issues are in their areas, and they know what kind of research could help address some of those issues. And so connecting with them, should you need to get help with any aspect of your full proposal, but specifically with connecting with end users of your research, I think is a really great way to strengthen your full proposal and make it more competitive. Okay, so my last slide is that Texas eSeaGrant wants to support research that will generate substantial long-term impacts in Texas. Now, sometimes the research that you propose and do will generate substantial short-term impacts in Texas, and we want to support those as well. But we really would like to find things that have long-term impacts in Texas. And we will be asking our technical review panel to be evaluating against this one criterion as kind of the last thing on the list, so that if they need to make a distinction between one proposal or another, and one gets funded and the other one doesn't, then this will be that last criterion that will be used. But all the other ones that I have shown you thus far are going to be applied across all of the full proposals. So is it aligned with our strategic plan goals? Does it address our research priorities? Does it integrate research and extension? Does it result or potentially result in outcome-oriented research? And are there end users identified? Those are the main criteria that we really want you to hammer hard in your full proposals, in that 12-page narrative and in that one-page summary. So I'm going to end here, and thank you all for your interest in this research competition today, or your research competition period, and in this webinar today. And I'm going to have to actually leave and leave you in the good hands of Mia and Cindy and our extension team now. And should you have any questions after today, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email address is just my last name, plotkin @tamu.edu, and I'm happy to Zoom with you, have a phone call with you, or just do it by email, however it works best for you. So thank you, and good luck with your full proposal writing. Take care.
Okay, so I am back to pick up on the presentation for the full proposals. And again, my name is Mia Zielinski, Assistant Director for Research and Fiscal Administration. I have no video, so you'll see that nice Texas eSeaGrant icon instead. I'll be going over the full proposal process and the review process and the full proposal requirements as per our request for proposals, and an overview on submitting through the eSeaGrant system. And again, if you would save your questions to the end. So the full proposal process, any applicant who submitted a pre-proposal is eligible to submit a full proposal, and it must be through the eSeaGrant system. We budget in our omnibus, our four-year omnibus, approximately $750,000 every 2 years for this research competition to support 4 to 6 projects. And so this year we had 108 pre-proposals, an overwhelming response. We encouraged 35 pre-proposals to develop into a full proposal. And through, even if you were not encouraged to submit a full proposal, the national guidelines with NOAA and the National eSeaGrant Office do stipulate, and we do follow accordingly as a state eSeaGrant program, that any applicant who submitted a pre-proposal is indeed eligible to submit a full proposal. And so the next bullet I have in bold, reread the RFP for the full proposal element requirements. I'll cover each of those. The element requirements for all of the sections that will be comprised that make up your full proposal are detailed and listed on pages 6 through 8 of the RFP. Proposals are due mid-April, Friday, April 16th at 5 o'clock via eSeaGrant. And just know, and I'll cover this on other slides, but you may submit your proposal multiple times. As you have edits, you uploaded a different file, you may have edits to your budget. You can resubmit as many times as you want up until that 5 o'clock time on April 16th, when the eSeaGrant proposal system will automatically close. So just know that. The lead PI is responsible for the full proposal content, the requirements, and submission in eSeaGrant. The lead institution of that lead PI actually is the legal entity who is submitting the proposal. So if you are in the Department of Civil Engineering at Texas A&M University on the College Station campus, it is Texas A&M University who is actually submitting the proposal through sponsored research services to Texas eSeaGrant for funding. So it's the lead PI, he's totally responsible for the proposal. The lead institution submits the proposal. We ask that your full proposal not deviate from the scope of work of your project that you submitted in your pre-proposal. And also do not deviate on the personnel that were included in your pre-proposal. You may have a PI only, you may have co-PIs on your pre-proposal. Life happens, we understand. It could be once someone is recommended for funding, that co-PI might change institutions and move to Ohio State. And so then we would work with you to have a sub-award set up on your award to that new institution. So we don't want you to deviate from the scope of work and the strategic plan goal that you chose on your pre-proposal. And we would like for you not to deviate on the personnel, but we know life does happen, such as the video on my computer. And so the award period for these 2-year grants have a start date of February 1 of 22 and will terminate the end of January 2024. And so those are the 2 years of our omnibus. Our period of performance is February 1 to January 31. And so your recommended funding, those projects are federal flow-through dollars from our omnibus funding that we receive from NOAA. So we follow that same period of performance. We follow the same rules and regs and policies that are flowed down from our special award conditions and terms and conditions on our award flow down to your award, and also flows down to your sub-awardees if you have any on your budget. And so these 2-year grants, the budget is a maximum of $150,000 a year, including direct and indirect. And it doesn't have to be $150,000, but it may not exceed $150,000 in direct and indirect costs for each of those 2 years. So the federal funds that you're requesting could be a maximum amount of $300,000 over that 2-year period. Now, our cost share requirement, again, follows our requirements from our prime sponsor, NOAA. The Department of Commerce and NOAA requires for every $2 that we are federally funded on our omnibus state eSeaGrant program, we are required to cost share $1. And again, so we're federally flowing through those funds to award you all. And so your cost share requirement is also 50%. And those sources of funds have to be non-federal funds. And when you are working on your budget, it's a minimum of 50% per year. And a lot of the proposal administrators put in a little formula to make sure that your bottom line doesn't exceed the 50% and or does not make that minimum of 50%. We need to have the cost share that exact amount each year. So in other words, you don't undercommit 1 year and overcommit another year. It needs to match whatever Fed funds that you're requesting, whether it's 100,000 or 150,000, then that 50% amount is what you'll have for each of those 2 years. And cost share as non-federal funds need to be reported as funds are spent. And so the most easily reported and trackable type of cost sharing and matching that an institution can report back to their sponsor, in i.e. Texas eSeaGrant has to report your award cost share up to our sponsor, NOAA. The easiest way to track cost share source of funds is to have the source of funds be from a system like payroll or tuition on a student. Those are easily trackable types of cost share. I use the example on different types of sources of funds for cost share. If you're a farmer and you're offering up your tractor to be the asset to represent that value of cost share on your budget, and by the time you get funded from your sponsor, if that tractor got stolen by Joe Blow down the street and you don't have that asset to report as cost share, the sponsor can pull your funds. And so again, we look for you to use a source of funds that's realistic, has a value, and payroll effort or tuition, some sort of system generated reporting is the best there. We'd like for you to be sure to gain institutional pre-approval of your budget in advance of submission. And so I encourage you to work a couple of weeks in advance with your proposal administrator and getting a good draft budget, and utilize that institutional draft budget that you have formulated with your proposal administrator. That not nearly final, but pretty final draft budget, you may use that to input into the eSeaGrant budget data worksheet. We now have the eSeaGrant system upgraded such that it will generate a SeaGrant 90-4 budget form for you and a budget justification document for you in PDF. So there are not other forms you have to fill out. You don't have to complete a budget justification form. You don't have to do any other budget type forms other than these that can be generated as a PDF output. And you can then use these to gain approval of your budget by your institution prior to submission. So you can be working on your budget from your institutional proposal administrator's draft budget, input that into eSeaGrant, generate that 90-4 download in PDF, and work with your proposal administrator to confirm that your amounts tie back to their final budget once that's in routing. You might have some rounding differences. So give yourself a couple of 3 weeks before the proposals due to be working on that. And think as you develop proposals, that's typically what occurs. You're working on your budget first, and you get a brief draft scope of work to route with your budget. So as you're working on those sorts of things and you get those into approval for routing purposes, and you're working on the rest of your documents for your full proposal, getting the budget data input into the eSeaGrant worksheet early on will allow you to have a good budget that you can work with, type in your justification by line item, get that output, and work with your proposal administrator to use those documents to secure approvals through your institution prior to submitting your full proposal in eSeaGrant on April 16th. And again, you can submit multiple times, but the final version by April 16th. And so continuing with the proposal review process, I've taken this exactly from pages 8 and 9 of the RFP. There's a merit review criteria, and the Texas eSeaGrant program, Dr. Plotkin has modeled the merit review criteria after the National Science Foundation's gold standard of scientific review. And the two criteria that where is merit on the text of your proposal narrative are two: intellectual merit, your potential of the project to advance knowledge and understanding within its own field or across different fields, the broader impacts. So you do your research, then what? What are the broader impacts? The potential to prepare the next cadre of scientists via education, extension, outreach activities. And again, this is where we will, the second half of our webinar will fold you into how we can better explain that for you and have you work with our team. And also know that with integrating research with extension, you may have your other extension or other collaborators that you'll be working with as well. You don't need to work with a Texas Sea Grant extension specialist. That's not required, but our staff is here to bring science into the broader impact realm of improving Texas and Texas's needs. So that is something that is going to be reviewed by the reviewers, the intellectual merit, and those broader impacts. So after the full proposal is submitted, it will initially go through an administrative review by the Texas Sea Grant Research Coordinator, i.e. me, and I'll be reviewing the full proposal for completeness and conformance to the RFP instructions, and I'll go over those in a moment. If the proposal does not adhere to the instructions, it will not move forward to the ad hoc peer review or the technical review panel team's review. So the preliminary review process, the ad hoc review, will be done by 3 out-of-state scholars and extension specialists without conflict of interest to evaluate the intellectual merit and specifics of integrating the broader impacts of your research into extension education and outreach, which is the purpose of this workshop. After the 3 peer reviewers finish with their reviews, we compile them. We have a technical review panel that we then bring in out-of-state technical review panels. This will be occurring in June in the Natural and Physical Sciences panel or Social, Behavioral, and Economic Sciences Law, Policy, and Planning panel, again, without a conflict of interest. And each proposal will receive 2 scores, intellectual merit and broader impacts. So continuing with the actual review process and the review criteria, and Dr. Plotkin went over some of this, but and again, this is taken exactly from the RFP. This is what your full proposal will be reviewed on this basis. So the rationale, the scientific professional merit, the innovativeness, the qualifications and past record of investigators, user relationships, the end users, activity, relationship to the Texas Sea Grant priorities, and programmatic justification. And this was where Dr. Plotkin was mentioning, you may have good solid rationale, scientific or professional merit, innovativeness, great qualifications. You've got selected end users of the results of the proposed activity, and they're being brought into the planning of your research activities. It may do very, very well in your project summary and in your narrative, where you have communicated that the proposed activity relates to the strategic plan focus area goals from the Texas Sea Grant strategic plan that Dr. Plotkin went over, and to the research priorities identified in this RFP. You may have that solid proposal, and there may be others where the technical review panel is ranking them so close to each other, and it could then be that programmatic justification, the degree to which the proposed activity will contribute as an essential or complementary unit to other projects, to reaching the objectives of the Texas Sea Grant program to meet our strategic plan goals, or the degree to which it addresses the needs of important state, regional, and national constituencies. So this same set of review criteria is what the peer reviewers, the 3 peer reviewers, will be scoring your full proposal on, and the technical review panel will review all of the peer reviews that were done, as well as reviewing from their perspective with the same review criteria. So it is a thorough, objective process that we go through before a proposal is recommended for funding. And the final selection process then, after the peer reviews are done and the technical panel review team meets in the summer, early summer, the Texas eSeaGrant director, Dr. Plotkin, will conduct a final review of all the proposals, all of the reviewers' comments and scores, all three of the peer reviewers, as well as the technical panelists, and will make a final determination to fund or not fund proposals based on the reviews, the programmatic priorities, and prior performance on Texas eSeaGrant funded research projects. So if you've been a prior Texas eSeaGrant funded researcher, that will also come into play in the final selection process. All of the reviewers' comments blinded will be made available to the lead PI. There is no rebuttal or response process. And we will provide a notice of funding decisions by mid-July. So that is the review process. And so as you're putting your full proposal together, as you did with your pre-proposal, and as what Dr. Plotkin has already gone over, again, what does Texas eSeaGrant want to fund? So I'm putting these slides back in front of you because it's really important. We want you to tell us which Texas eSeaGrant strategic plan focus area goals that your proposed project will be aligned with, and which of the research priorities that are represented in our RFP, if these are addressed. This is what we're needing. And we're wanting you to integrate, again, that research and extension to improve the understanding, wise use, and stewardship of Texas's coastal and marine resources. Outcome-oriented research again, having that end user identified, and bringing in the end user in your proposal development such that they would provide you a letter of collaboration. Research also that will generate substantial long-term impacts in Texas. So, again, it's just bringing this, just wanting you to understand this, that the state eSeaGrant programs support research that align with their strategic plans, because the state eSeaGrant program, Texas eSeaGrant, is evaluated by our prime sponsor, NOAA, on its research investments, the outcomes of those research investments, and the relevance of these investments to identified state needs. And again, during the pre-proposal webinar, I went over how every year prior to a research competition RFP is written, that summer, Dr. Plotkin sends out a survey to researchers and collaborators and stakeholders across the state of Texas to tell us what are the important needs for Texas for the next couple of years that you feel is important to fund. And so based on that survey, that is how we developed the research priorities for this RFP. And a lot of the eSeaGrant programs do the same thing because we're all evaluated by our prime sponsor. And again, here are the strategic plan goals by focus area, but resilient communities and economies, goal 1 and 2. Again, be specific in your project summary. This is the strategic plan goal that I'm going to cover in my proposal. This is the research priority identified in the RFP that will achieve this goal that I'm proposing in my full proposal. the sustainable fisheries and aquaculture goals, the healthy coastal ecosystems goals. And you may have a balance. There's a question in the Q&A if a consideration on a balance of a couple of strategic plan goals. They may flow into each other and may work together, and that would be considered. Again, the research priorities taken from page 2 under sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. These priorities are what the survey told us is important to Texas. These are the priorities under healthy coastal ecosystems, the priorities under resilient communities and economies that, again, the survey communicated that is important for funding over the next couple of years. As we go into the full proposal requirements, I'm listed items directly from the RFP, and I just wanted to discuss each of them with you and then give you additional pointers and guidelines and suggestions. So our formatting requirements are pretty typical, almost like a National Science Foundation proposal. You want the text to be single-spaced, 12-point minimum font with 1-inch margins. The type of font it isn't specific, but we don't want old English, something that's minimal like Arial or something like that. But 12-point minimum font. Strict adherence to page limitations is required, and that would include any figures or tables or images that you insert into the pages of your 12-page narrative. We want you to be sure to consider that. So strict adherence to page limitations. And as Dr. Plotkin mentioned earlier, in how you're writing your proposal, as reviewers will be that might have different backgrounds, you want the content to be written in such that it informs those working in same or related disciplines and is understandable to a scientifically literate audience, not so much with acronyms and that sort of thing, but written in the third person, informative to those that are working the same or related disciplines and understandable to a scientific literate audience. All documents for the full proposal on the formatting and other requirements is that all documents need to be uploaded into eSeaGrant, must be a PDF. We don't have any other documents now, like an Excel budget worksheet. We're not requiring those anymore because the eSeaGrant system, again, will output your budget for you. This is something that kind of is interesting. We usually get questions on this. You may submit either as a PI or a co-PI no more than 2 full proposals. So you could be on another lead PI's full proposal as a co-PI. And then you might also submit your own proposal as a lead PI. But successful investigators will receive a maximum of 1 grant as the lead PI. So we're hoping that clarified some of the historical questions that we've had from prior competitions. So 1 grant as lead PI. The full proposal requirements taken exactly from the RFP. The content of each element. So here the items are required. And then there is a very brief paragraph that gives you the content of what each of these elements would contain. And it also gives you a specific page limitation. So we tried to make this straightforward for you with the list of what's required. And then the RFP went into further description by item on pages 6 through 8 of the RFP. So the first few items are pretty standard as for any full proposal. Your project title and investigator information, a 2-page CV for the PI, co-PI, and other key personnel. So if you've got other collaborators If you happen to have a co-PI at another institution where there would be a subaward, if they are considered members of your key personnel team, then they would also need to provide you a 2-page CV, and the 2-page is the limitation. A CV, standard formatting. We don't have any specific requirements, but I always go back to the gold standard, as Dr. Plotkin has, for documents for full proposals, the National Science Foundation, and even USDA, the National Science Foundation has great standard formatting for CVs. Then, as we have asked you, as we did for the pre-proposal for this competition, we will ask you to, again, tell us specifically which focus area goal that you have selected from the strategic plan that your narrative and your proposal will be achieving, and which research priority that you have selected. So we'll want you to give us that information again up front. Tell the reviewer what you want them to know, and we want you to tell us so that they have the information that your proposal will be addressing the strategic plan, focus area goal, a primary, maybe a secondary. You don't have to have a secondary, but then specifically the research priority per the RFP. We'll have a project summary, a 1-page limit. You can read the RFP for the specific element content, but it's pretty much as you would know and see on other proposals where you have a brief abstract, your objectives, your rationale, your methodology. Again, telling them first off what that focus area goal is and the research priority, title, goal, priority, objectives, rationale, methodology in your project summary. Then you go into your narrative, 12-page limit. Please read the content under that element. Dr. Plotkin has given great specific content description of what you would like to put into your narrative that is going to address the focus area goals, the research priority, and how you're going to integrate research with extension. The next element is literature cited, no page limit there. And we've already kind of gone into this, and I'm going to go into this further in some other slides, but your budget, the eSeaGrant system will generate a SeaGrant 90-4 budget form that NOAA requires. And it'll be in a PDF based on what you have input from your institution's draft budget. Confirm that those amounts tie back to your institution's draft budget, then make any budget revisions later on once your institution approves your budget. And you'll have to have separate budgets for both you as the applicant, your institution as the applicant, and if you have a subaward, subrecipient on your proposal. The next element is the budget justification. There's no page limit. Again, the eSeaGrant system will generate that budget justification in a PDF document for you based on your data input. So as you enter your budget category, then you enter the text related to the justification for that budget amount, and then the system, when you print the PDF for the budget, the justification will be combined with the budget itself. So it's really neat what they have finally done for us in eSeaGrant to make it easier for UPIs to prepare your documents. So, and again, separate budget justifications for both the institutional applicant and any subawards that you would have. After the budget and budget justification, an institutional letter of commitment and cost share is required to be signed on the institutional letterhead with the authorizing organizational representative's signature. It would also commit the sources of funds that you are going to be cost sharing, offering as match at 50%. And there's an institutional letter of commitment and cost share required by both the institutional applicant and if you have any subaward recipients. We also require, it used to be recommended, but we are requiring it now because we had feedback from reviewers from prior competitions when a great proposal did not have that letter of support from a collaborator, and specifically now that we've included end users for this RFP competition, not necessarily for someone to commit to possibly committing to something beyond what they can do with you, with your proposal. You want your collaborators and your end users to be realistic on what they would like to do for you on your project scope of work. And then optional, we can have you provide us with a list of suggested reviewers. Now, and just one page limit, and we have a template that's provided in eSeaGrant that you can download and complete and then convert it to a PDF and re-upload it. We want the suggested reviewers to be without any conflict of interest, and an out-of-state reviewer is what we would be looking for if you have suggested reviewers that you would like for us to reach out to consider for their review of your proposal. You may also list those that you might not want to have them review your proposal. So there's that option too. So again, the proposal elements that are required, refer to the RFP pages where it goes into the content of that element, which is, it just spoon feeds you through what is required. So follow that. Other full proposal requirement items of note, we do not require a current and pending support document. That is not required. It is not necessary to submit that with your proposal. However, keep in mind that you are only 100% effort, 1 FTE, all of your current awards that you have, all of your pending support of proposals that you might have, including this one, you want to keep in your mind what you're able to commit to. And that's your decision there, but we do not require a current and pending support document. Proposals that are selected for funding will be required to submit additional documents. So these are not required in your full proposal at this time. In the July timeframe, when we are able to determine which of the proposals that we would be recommending to the National eSeaGrant Office and to NOAA to fund, I will reach out to you and ask for you then to prepare a data management plan. Those are standard, but we have guidelines on our in our RFP on that. And you will be required to complete a NAPA questionnaire. I'm going to go over that in pretty much detail, but that is a requirement that you'll need to complete these two. And then this other document is kind of regenerating what you would be providing in your project summary abstract, but it's on a different form that helps with our sponsor in adding project records to their reporting system. And so this particular document, they're going through some changes, and so that might not be a document that's specifically required. We'll know more during the summertime. Looks like I've got an extra space there. But we probably will if you completed information like your objective, your rationale, your methodology under your project summary abstract. Here, a lot of that information is what is then populated into this form. And so we don't want you to have to worry about that right now. So these forms will be required later in the summer, but we want you to keep in mind this NEPA questionnaire. And then other items of note, finally, the reporting requirements. As the lead PI on your project, you are responsible for quarterly and annual reporting via the eSeaGrant reporting system. And again, that is because your successes are our successes, and our successes are reported on an annual basis to our sponsor, to our National Sea Grant Program Office, and then to our sponsor, NOAA, on an annual basis. So where I made the note here that in the summer, when we are recommending the 4 to 6 proposals to be funded as projects, we will have you fill out this NEPA questionnaire, but we want this to be on your mind now because all NOAA funded research projects must comply with the National Environmental Protection Agency. And years and years and years ago, those researchers remember filling out like a 21-page multi-questionnaire form that over the last 4 years or so, they have abbreviated into a smaller 2 to 3 page questionnaire. And so this questionnaire must be completed shortly after the notification of recommendation for funding in mid-July. We have to review that compliance questionnaire for content and to make sure that there are not any environmental risks. And if there are not, we want you to state that. We then have to send these abbreviated environmental compliance questionnaires to our National Sea Grant Office program officer, because that is the next step to ensure that there would not need to be a further environmental compliance investigation that might have to occur before you could even be funded. So this form isn't required now during the full proposal process, but it will be completed in the summer, so keep that in mind. The questionnaire is required to include relevant, proper permit, status, or copies, address whether you would have any permits needed, and enclose those, including those by partner institutions or subrecipients. And the responsibility for acquiring a permit, if your project needs one, lies with the funded PI in that institution. And so we want this to be on your mind because it does take time to complete this questionnaire. It takes time to determine whether you have environmental compliance or permits that you need to apply for and get approval through your institution. All of that takes time. So failure to secure permits may result in delayed receipt of funds with a special award condition that's placed on the pending award. We've had that occur where a researcher was approved by our prime sponsor, NOAA, to fund, but until that special award condition, that permit, whatever, was satisfied by sending that information to our prime sponsor to document that it's been cleared, the permit's been received, it's been satisfied. Not until that's done prior to the start of the project or when the project has started, it may be that they can't start that next part of the scope of work until that environmental risk or that permit that you would be needing for your project is in place. So as you draft your full proposal, consider the timing needs for these, the completion of the questionnaire, the securing of the permits, your institutional compliance office requests for animal welfare or human subject protocol approvals if need be. visit our RFP website under the header resources towards the bottom of the web page. We have a section for resources, for forms, different forms for the questionnaire, and also examples. Our sponsor has provided us examples of different types of questionnaires, whether it's related to a project for lab research or field research or social environmental type research. They've been good enough to provide us examples of those types of questionnaires that have been completed, and I've got those on the webpage. And there are also guidelines on the webpage. So keep all this in mind. It will ensure timeliness to have the form completed accurately with approvals and documents in order. And seek advisement from your institutional compliance office, your sponsored programs office. They're there to help you and assist you to make things work for you seamlessly. And so the full proposal submission requirements, again, due mid-April, April 16th, 5 o'clock, and eSeaGrant. I will have the instructions and access available to you by March 24th. So I will let you know, all of you who PIs who submitted a pre-proposal are already registered, of course, but we would want your Co-PIs to register so that they can upload their CV. And they can register now, so that you don't have to wait until March 24th. But we're getting upgrades to the eSeaGrant system, and I'll be setting up that full proposal final phase ready for you with instructions and access by March 24th. And so we want you to follow the eSeaGrant full proposal submission instructions. eSeaGrant is really, it has a very easy navigation. The menus on the left-hand side of the screen will step you through the process. Again, the PI is responsible for the submission. The eSeaGrant system is PI driven. So that lead PI is one who is only the one who is able to submit the proposal in eSeaGrant. We want the Co-PIs to also register in eSeaGrant. We want you to work with your sponsored programs proposal administrator early. Do not wait until a week before the proposal is due in the system. The proposal administrator can help assist you, though. They cannot get into the system like National Science Foundation proposals, the Fast Lane proposal system. They're not able to actually get into the eSeaGrant system. Some institutions are allowed, but while the proposal administrator may or may not have institutional authorizing access to eSeaGrant, I know the A&M proposal administrators do not. Other institutions, their grant specialist assisted with parts of the full proposal within eSeaGrant as a delegate function. But again, it's the PI that has to submit the proposal. And those proposal administrators who aren't able to assist as a delegate or assist in actually getting into the eSeaGrant system, they can still assist you and facilitate it as they're able, and you all may reach out to me if and when needed. So again, as I spoke earlier during the budgeting overview of the full proposal process, we want you to gain institutional pre-approval of your budget in advance of the submission in eSeaGrant. So the 2 weeks prior to your submission, 2 to 3 weeks before, but definitely 2 weeks before, you're working with your proposal administrator to get that institutional budget in a draft form. And once you get it in the draft form, you can input into the eSeaGrant budget data worksheet. You can then input the justification text by budget line item, save each time. And then eSeaGrant will generate both the SeaGrant 90-4 budget and justification document in PDF. Again, no additional forms are needed related to the budget. And this can all be done prior to you actually submitting the proposal in eSeaGrant. And so that SeaGrant 90-4 budget and justification PDF output then can be used to gain your institution's approval. Work with your proposal administrator to confirm that the eSeaGrant budget data worksheet that you've input the data into, those totals that then are generated in the 90-4 budget output PDF, make sure they tie back to the totals in the final version of your institutional budget when your institutional sponsored programs office has approved the routing of your budget. You may have to have some budget revisions, and you can go back into eSeaGrant and update your budget data worksheet with those revisions. And that can be done for a final version prior to final submission on April 16th or before. And as I said, you may submit multiple times, but the system will automatically close at 5. And so for the eSeaGrant system full proposal steps, know that the system works best with Chrome and Firefox. And I don't know if you did this when you submitted your pre-proposal, if you were looking for your confirmation email and never got a confirmation email and you looked in your junk mail folder and aha, there it was. So first step, add the eSeaGrant contact email address to your safe contact list to ensure that you receive all notifications. So when your Co-PI is registering, have them add the address to their safe contact list so that you get the registration notification and proposal submission confirmations to avoid routing to the junk mail folder. So we have an eSeaGrant PI manual that was prepared. It's just a very brief overview that was provided by Exion, the software engineering company that developed the eSeaGrant system for the SeaGrant state programs. Under resources, that manual is on our webpage. I have here the link for you to log in or register, the access there, and that's also on our RFP webpage under resources. If you're registering, i.e. the Co-PIs, a verification email will be sent with a verification code to enter to complete the next steps of the registration process. Once you've logged in, you can update your profile information or change your password. At the upper right of your screen, you can click on your name and then select My Profile and update or make any changes you want to do there. So after March 24th, or by March 24th, when you log into eSeaGrant, under tasks, you'll see the RFP 2022-2024. So, and you know, if you register or if you log in now, you'll be able to log into eSeaGrant, but there will not be any tasks until I open the access to the full proposal phase. And once I do that, then you'll see this phase for you to click on. You can select Add Proposal, enter your proposal title from what you previously submitted on your pre-proposal, choose Continue, then confirm that your proposal title loaded correctly, and then click Next. And so just following through the proposal steps, just follow the steps for each proposal element that's on the left-hand side menu of the proposal screen in eSeaGrant. Follow the little instructions upload that PDF document, whether it's a CV or your proposal narrative or your literature cited. Choose save, save often. And when in doubt, save after every step. And then once all your selections are complete and you've got your final version, you haven't updated your CV again, each of the sections will have a little box that you can click on that says complete, and it turns that section from a red dot to a green dot. And so it really, the left-hand side of the menu has easy navigation, and it will step you through the process. You can either step through via the left-hand side of the margin menu, or it'll have next up at the top for each page that you're on. So prior to submission, we want you to click next and go to submission preview, which is at the bottom of the left-hand side menu, because that would be the next to the last step that you would do is click on submission preview to actually review your document. You can download it as a zip file and open up those documents. There are some forms that you will not have completed, but that the eSeaGrant system is hard-coded and provides extra pages. I think there's one is just a one-page document that has your title and your keywords, for example. But just look for all the documents that you've uploaded to make sure that they're in there and they are in a PDF form. So you can make edits at any time before the deadline and re-upload PDFs, finalize your budget, but you must select submit before the system automatically closes at 5. Your confirmation emails will be received in your inbox because you will have added that eSeaGrant address to your safe contact list. You can make edits after submitting your proposal, provided it's prior to that deadline. And remember to select resubmit. So you may have re-uploaded a document, or you may have edited your budget, but unless you're clicking on save and complete, and then resubmitting the proposal, the system won't record what you've done. So always remember to select resubmit so that eSeaGrant will record your changes. And again, you may resubmit multiple times. So some screenshots, the landing page, whenever you're clicking on the link to go to eSeaGrant, you'll either log right in, which will populate, or you register from here. So for the full proposal, the Start Here screen, as I said, re-enter the same proposal title from your pre-proposal that you submitted. So you can see here's the left-hand side menu that I was referring to. There's the current task and the RFP that's then showing up. And then once you start to add a proposal, you get this pop-up screen and you enter the title of your pre-proposal, which is now going to be a full proposal. So there's that screenshot. So the overview of the proposal system, again, the left-hand side menu that I was referring to, and as you're at each, so start here, welcome, here's my title, here are my keywords, and each page at each step in the menu, it's going to have a next over here for you to where it will automatically take you to each of these next elements here. And so this is an example from a prior proposal. There are some forms in here that you're not going to have to do. So this is not a final example. My instructions will advise you, and the RFP tells you exactly what you're going to need to submit, and the menu items will reflect that once we get that done. And for submitting, you've got 2 steps. It's the Texas State Sea Grant Program submission 2-step. Prior to submission, download your proposal file and review it. Then submit, and if you need to resubmit, do that prior to the system closing on April 16th at 5 o'clock. So here's your submission preview down towards the bottom here. And so what it will do is it'll preview in all these pages. As you scroll down, it'll show a list of all of these elements, and it will have a little link where it will show the document you've uploaded. But you can also download the zip file, and it will have all those pages in there. Example of the confirmation email that you'll receive. That won't go to your inbox because you will have whitelisted the Texas eSeaGrant address to your saved contact list. So if you have any proposal submission questions for the full proposal and the request for proposal RFP contacts, any questions about the proposal development, submission, and review, or the eSeaGrant system, please reach out to me. Send me an email and I'll do my best to answer. For questions related to the funding priorities within the RFP and the focus area goals related to that will be achieved from those, from the priority that your project will be about. If you have any questions about that, please contact Dr. Plotkin and she will assist you. So as a summary, remember that competitive proposals, the most competitive full proposals, will clearly address focus area goals, research priorities, end users, and will integrate research with extension. And again, we're going to have you save questions towards the end. And we are now heading off to the second half of our webinar on learning how to integrate research and extension and be introduced to the team. And I will hand off to our Senior Associate Director and Extension Program Leader, Cindy Lyle, for her part of the presentation. So I will now stop my share and see if Cindy's ready to go. And I think people are on mute, so you might want to unmute when you're ready. Thank you all for your patience. Email me when you need to.
Okay, there we go. Now am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, Cindy. Take it away. And
Sorry about
Dusty is
that.
helping with the slides, I think.
I've got multiple screens going here. Hi, welcome. Thank y'all for joining today. My name is Cindy Lyle, and I'm the Senior Associate Director and Extension Leader. My role today is to talk to you about our goals in assisting you with understanding the importance of integrating research with extension. And this is the broader impacts component. We utilize broader impacts to bring knowledge to action. So I will go into some of those details. Thank y'all for joining today. All right, so you saw this earlier, Dr. Plotkin provided this slide. Our mission is to integrate research and extension within to support our mission for Texas coastal issues and benefits. So the integrative model is a two-way exchange that integrates research with extension. And I'm going to go two ways on this. I'm going to take you from the research side through extension, and then I'm going to take you from extension back to research. So I'm going to start with research because you guys are researchers and you understand this component, and then I'll go backwards, and I think it'll make more sense if we go through this process. So as researchers, you as researchers inform society on environmental, economic, and social issues that impact coastal environments. So we want to capitalize on your knowledge, and we do that through the RFP process, which is what we're discussing today. We fund researchers, or we fund research to validate the scientific challenges through scientific discovery that impact Texas coastal communities. The extension team, we have an extension team of specialists and agents who support you in your research projects to translate the research that you do to communities for implementing best practices and solutions, or at least communicating best practices and solutions. And we do that through training and different types of mechanisms for assisting you through outreach and education. You are, again, I think both Dr. Plotkin and Mia mentioned this, you are more than welcome to utilize our extension team within your research. You do not have to, but there needs to be an outreach component to your research. So we're here to support you if you would like to utilize our team, but you certainly you're not required to utilize our team. So if you need us to help translate research or provide assistance in outreach and education, we're here to do that. And then the last step in the process is communities implement and adopt the recommended best practices that improve their communities. So it's a full cycle from research to extension. Now I'm going to take you the other direction. We're going to go back. Again, it's knowledge to action, but it's an opposite way of looking at things. So it's still a two-way exchange between research and extension, but coastal communities come to Texas eSeaGrant and advise us on environmental, economic, and social issues that impact their communities. We specifically seek out recommendations from communities to inform our research priorities for the biennial research competition. I wrote the wrong word there, I'm sorry. For the biennial research competition. So the research priorities are informed by the Texas coastal communities who tell us what the challenges are that they're addressing. Our agents consult with these communities. They live in these communities, they work in these communities, they are impacted by the challenges that affect these communities. So they're very interested in the success of these communities. So they consult with community leaders to address any kind of environmental, economic, and societal issues. And we work with them in education and outreach programs. Then we translate the challenges that communities have back to the researchers through project participation, research participation, and just through a research process or engagement processes with the research communities that we collaborate with. And then the last step is then you as researchers utilize the research that we have funded, and you take those back out to the broader research community and utilize the research that we fund to make a broader impact across your research specialty areas. So that's the integrative model for research and extension. This article, there's an article that came out recently called, from Jones, Hollis, and Brigg, called Strategies for Successful Research to Application Projects, a case study of the National eSeaGrant program. It was published in the Frontiers in Marine Science. I would strongly encourage anybody who has any interest in broader impacts to read this article. It is a fantastic article, and it can be implemented within National eSeaGrant, NOAA. It can be implemented as well in National eSeaGrant broader impacts as well. So this is an excellent article that I encourage everybody to read. The point that I would like to pull out of this article was, how do we integrate research with extension and education? Well, the research that you perform informs the science that we then take and communicate to the public, whether that be you, us, together. You know, we're a team here, so we're all reaching for the same goals. We want to consult, we use the research that you create to consult communities through involvement and collaborations. And involvement means outreach and education and collaborations. And then and education, we can outreach, education, and extension. And then the goal of this at the end is to empower communities to implement best practices and implement the resources that are created to better their communities. It empowers them to do this and make their own communities better. One of the challenges that I think is fairly common is understanding what is extension, what is outreach, what is engagement. These are terms that are intermixed a lot, and they're not always clear. So I figured I would give you a little overview of the definitions of how Texas eSeaGrant envisions extension, outreach, and engagement. Extension is the engagement with community stakeholders to improve the relevancy and utility of eSeaGrant funded research. Extension is actually an integration of outreach and engagement. It's a broader a broader term than outreach and engagement. So outreach sits under extension, and outreach is the one-way delivery of information to enhance awareness of science and research. So outreach would be like the development of fact sheets or a website or curriculum or a presentation or a publication. It's a one-way delivery system that is very informative and very important to make sure that we're communicating the benefits of your research. Engagement is a two-way relationship between organizations or people that have mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources in the context of partnership and reciprocity. So examples of that would be planning workshops, task forces, experiential learning opportunities for students, citizen science, activities, research. These are two-way relationships. So I hope that helps you understand the difference between extension, outreach, and engagement. Again, outreach is a one-way delivery, engagement is two-way. This is a little cheat sheet that I've developed. When you're developing your outreach and engagement plan, I strongly encourage you to have an outreach and engagement plan in your proposal that very clearly explains how you're going to utilize or integrate extension with your research. So my cheat sheet is, there's just some tidbits of hints that might be helpful for you. So create a title that conveys a societal benefit. I mean, that forces you to have an outreach component to the research that you're doing. Also identify how your extension plan will achieve Texas eSeaGrant strategic goals. Mia and Dr. Plotkin spent a significant time on the critical importance of this. So remember that it is absolutely critical that you tie your research and extension plan to our Texas Sea Grant strategic goals under the strategic plan. Also discuss how your broader impacts of your extension plan provide societal benefits. If you provided a title, this will be a natural connection. If you provided a societal benefit in your title. If you haven't, make sure it's very clear how your extension plan benefits society. Make sure you identify your target audience. What stakeholders are you trying to reach, and how do they benefit from the research, and how are you going to disseminate and get the information to your target audience, or to the stakeholders. Define clear and measurable SMART extension goals and objectives. Outline specific extension strategies that align with the goals and objectives. So strategies would be the examples. If we go back to those, the definitions of outreach and extension, those types of things, those fact sheets and those publications and the conferences and task forces and things, those are your extension strategies. How do you disseminate the information that you're creating within your research? And then clearly describe how extension activities will be measured. We're going to talk about that next. So impact, measuring your research. What is impact? Impact is an activity that has a measurable and significant economic, societal, and or environmental benefit. I have provided 5 examples of projects, of long-term projects that Texas Sea Grant has been working on and have had significant impacts, whether that be economic, societal, or environmental. Baffin Bay, Dr. Wetz at Texas A&M Corpus Christi has been working for years, leading an effort in Baffin Bay for watershed environmental assessment. Ashley Venice is going to go over this particular project a little later during the presentation. And I think you'll get a good idea of the true impact that Baffin Bay, the research that's being done in Baffin Bay has. We do not claim all of the research and all of this success in Baffin Bay, but we have been a significant part of helping to fund those efforts and providing resources toward those efforts. LaPorte Exploration Green is a really interesting example of land use. They had a golf course a city golf course that had closed. And therefore they decided to repurpose that land as a floodplain management tool within their communities. So they're on about phase 3 of repurposing that land and creating a habitat that is both beautiful and absolutely functional to manage floodplain, to manage floods within LaPorte. Tony Reisinger is standing by a turtle excluder device in the center picture. We have helped develop technologies for a number of years to for saving species from getting trapped in commercial fishing shrimp nets. So we've been working on this. We help manage the process and help commercial fishermen understand, the proper use of what we call affectionately TEDs. Laura Piccarello will go over a similar device. It's called a bycatch reduction device. It's more for finfish and other types of species, not as much for turtles, but it's a very similar concept. So she's going to go over this a little bit later in our presentation as well. And I think you'll get a good idea of how Texas Sea Grant supports technology development and species survival technologies. Rockport, we all know about Hurricane Harvey. We all know it hit Rockport, and it was absolutely devastating. So we've been working with Rockport since Hurricane Harvey to assess and help determine resiliency strategies for economic recovery. So that's an area that we've worked in for years, is just basically disaster recovery. And up top here, the top right, South Padre Island, harmful algal bloom monitoring. There is a team of master naturalists in South Padre who are specially trained to assess and monitor and detect harmful algal blooms. So we don't only have access to just our team of extension team members, we also have a huge network of people that help Texas Sea Grant through the I think we have 5 or 6 master naturalist chapters that we work very, very closely with. So just realize that we have a broad network beyond just our extension team as well. We can't do it it's all by ourselves. Obviously, we have a great, amazing team behind us. So these are projects that we're working on. And then I'm going to show you the same picture or the same projects again, and help you understand how we measure long-term impacts on these. So the way to measure impacts is to do pre and post testing or some kind of pre and post measurement. So that's what we've done in most of our projects. And you can do pre and post measurements on environmental quality, perception and behavior change, quality of life, economics, or policy changes that impact and improve communities. You can do pre and post on all of these. So if you again look at Baffin Bay, Ashley will describe how some of the research that has been done in Baffin Bay has actually improved the coastal environment through restoration efforts. LaPorte Exploration Green, they have restored, I don't even know how many acres we're up to now, but again, they're on phase 3, so they're probably on about hole 6 or 7 with improvements to that community. And it has made a huge difference in reducing flooding in LaPorte. And it's a phenomenal project. I would love to see that project, similar projects in other communities where they no longer are utilizing golf courses. The turtle excluder device, it is quite simple to measure how many turtles have been saved because we don't capture them in the nets anymore. So if you compare the number of turtles that used to be captured in nets compared to the number of turtles that are captured now, it's significantly less. And again, Laura Piccarello is our expert on this, and she can go into great detail, but there have been huge improvements on environment species survival rates just with turtle excluder devices and bycatch reduction devices or TEDs and birds. Again, we've been measuring Rockport's economic resiliency since Hurricane Harvey. And also, you know, it's the data that comes out for harmful algal blooms is reported so that people know whether or not it's safe to go out to the beach or go to vacation at South Padre or wherever harmful algal blooms might be. So there's a lot of ways that we can impact communities, and we can measure these communities or measure the success of our projects, I guess is a better way to say that. So now I'd like to introduce the eSeaGrant team. I'm going to, well, let's go to the next slide. So Texas SeaGrant is headquartered in College Station. And the reason that we're headquartered in College Station is because Texas A&M in College Station is Texas's land grant institution. This is our 50th year anniversary. in 2021. And 50 years ago, it was decided that Texas eSeaGrant would be housed at the Land Grant Institution for Texas. So this is our 50th year here, and our leadership and administrative team are housed here in College Station. But then we have 14 extension specialists and agents who live in and support communities along the Texas coast. So I'm going to introduce you to all of them in a few minutes, but I just wanted you to know that they don't live in College Station, they live in the communities that we serve. So again, our headquarters is in College Station, but we have different types of extension team members. We have extension specialists and we have extension agents. Our specialists specialize in fisheries, community planning, resource management, things along those lines. And we have extension specialists who live in Harris County, in Galveston, in Matagorda, Nueces, and Cameron counties. And then we also have our agents who are county-based. They are tied to both Texas eSeaGrant and AgriLife. So they even have a broader network of people that we can access throughout the AgriLife network. But we have generalists or agents, if you will, who live in Chambers and Jefferson County, Galveston, Brazoria, Matagorda, Calhoun, and Cameron County. So we are in each of the different regions of the coast. We have people who understand the issues and the challenges within those coastal regions. And then we also, our agents, again, are county-based, but our specialists can go to any county in the state and along the coast and be able to support research and extension efforts all up and down the coast. So I'm hoping this works. I'd like to introduce each of our our extension team to you. I hope we can have an overview from each one of them if I can figure out how to get all of them on the audio. So I'm going to start with Walter. Walter, can you go ahead and give a brief overview of yourself and your specialty and what you do and where you work and how you can help support researchers?
Sure. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Great. I'm Walter Peacock. I'm a planning specialist with Texas eSeaGrant, and I work in the Upper Coast. I'm actually located inside of Houston, but if there are different communities you would like to work with in the Upper Coast, you can use me as a resource to get in contact with a lot of different cities and municipalities that I might be working with at the time. Like I said, I'm a planning specialist, and I usually work with communities to help develop comprehensive plans, work on ordinance, zoning, or anything that the community might need. I also act as a liaison between those communities and researchers and faculty at main campus in Texas A&M University. Nice to meet all y'all, and I hope to be working with y'all soon.
Thank you, Walter. Laura, are you available? Can we hear you? Here you are.
Yeah, hi, how you doing, everybody? Hopefully you can see me okay. I'm having to do this on my phone because I'm actually chairing a whole nother committee meeting right now. So apologies if I look weird at all, but anyway. Laura Piccarello, fisheries specialist, and I am based in Galveston. I do work across all of the fishery sectors. My most significant background is in commercial fisheries, but I do also work with fishing guides for higher industry and recreational. I work throughout Texas and across the Gulf of Mexico. We are engaged in a lot of regional projects for fish populations that, of course, aren't only isolated to Texas. And I work on anything, honestly, from, the fish populations and how we harvest them all the way up through management and business practices and how we market seafood. So kind of throughout the entire supply chain from the water to your plate. I similar to Walter, I act as a liaison often between industry and either management or researchers and kind of help bridge that gap and bring people together to work in more collaboratively on industry issues. And I'm going to talk a little bit later, I think, on an example on some of the specific projects that I'm working on. So I'll leave it there for now, and nice to meet y'all.
Thank you, Laura. Can we get Mario on? Is that, yes, there we go. Perfect.
Yes. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Mario Marquez. I'm the oyster aquaculture specialist for Texas eSeaGrant, and I'm located in Palacios, Texas, which is right in between Corpus and Galveston. Even though I'm not tied to it, I work with farmers or just the oyster aquaculture industry all over the coast of Texas. And I also work, like Walter and Laura said, as a liaison between academics, scientists, private industry, and farmers, hatcheries. And I'm really trying to get this, we're really trying to get this oyster aquaculture industry started, since they just started as of September 2020. So whatever you guys need help with, I'm here to help.
Thank you, Mario. And I apologize, it says Matagorda, but you actually reside in Palacios. I'll make that revision. My apologies. Morgan, can we get Morgan on? All right, we'll try again later. Danny, can we get Danny on? All right, well, Morgan, we may be having issues with connecting some of these folks. So Morgan is our natural resource specialist. She lives in Corpus Christi, but she-
I'm here, Cindy.
Oh, you can't? Oh, you're Danny? Okay.
It's Danny.
Okay. Oh, and there's Morgan. I'll let Morgan go over hers. Go ahead, Morgan.
Sorry about that. It had to reassign me to a panelist. So
It's okay.
yeah, thank you, Cindy. I am Morgan Ayers. I'm located in Corpus and work the Texas coast right now, emphasizing in the coastal bend and trying to get more projects going in the Rio Grande Valley. And I'm working on anything from watershed protection planning to acreage restoration and some education for students on healthy coastal ecosystems, as well as undergraduate student support, trying to connect them to internships and, just increase the knowledge of marine and coastal stewardship. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Danny, you're up next.
Perfect. Hi, y'all. I'm Danny. I'm not sure why I don't have a camera option, but I am here. I'm an oil spill specialist. I'm located in Corpus Christi. As long as we're with our whole Texas eSeaGrant extension team, I am also part of the oil spill science outreach team, which means I have team members all the way over to Florida, and we do a variety of oil outreach work. So anywhere from industry to fisheries to ecology. I'm the ecologist or ecology and coastal systems expert for the team, but we do have modelers and amazing chemists and anything that ranges that oil spill science team. So if there's any questions or anything we can help out with or help get your research out throughout Texas and or the Gulf, I'm more than happy to be there for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Can we get Ashley on? There.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm Ashley Venice. I am also a planning specialist, very similar, the same as what Walter was talking about. I'm located in Corpus Christi, and I cover the coastal bend region So I've been involved in a lot of that post-Hurricane Harvey support and providing planning support to communities and helping to, bring resources and tools from the university. And I would say just the only thing I want to add on top of everything that Walter said is that we're really good at tying in these regional aspects and helping to connect all these different moving parts because we're not tied by jurisdiction like some of the communities that we work in. So we can do a lot of coordinating between not only communities, academia and us, but also, industry and some of those other sides of it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ashley. Alexis, are you available?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis Sabine. I am also a fisheries specialist, and I'm also based in the Corpus Christi office. My background is in working with recreational and commercial fishing communities, and my role here at eSeaGrant is focused mostly on the recreational sector. So I'm currently working on a few projects concerning the for hire or fishing guide sector. And we are also looking to expand those programs into the private angler sector as well in the future. I'm happy to be here and I look forward to working with some of you in the future.
Thank you, Alexis. And last of our specialists, but certainly not least, Kate De Janeiro. Kate, are you available?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kate De Janeiro. I'm located in the Rio Grande Valley. My office is in Brownsville. I was hired on within a couple weeks after Hurricane Harvey, so I did a lot of work related to that. And at that time, I was doing a lot of work in the coastal bend. Some of my work overlapped with Ashley, but now I tend to focus in the Rio Grande Valley. Like Walter and Ashley, I'm planning specialist. So they've covered a lot of stuff that we do, but so we also work with students. I'm not sure if that was mentioned. We work directly with graduate students in the urban planning department at A&M. We involve them in most of our planning projects with drafting the plan documents, provide a variety of technical assistance, providing information and data, making GIS maps. Ashley mentioned the building partnerships to improve regional cooperation. And one other thing I thought about was just some educational workshops, just teaching different people in the community, whether you're a resident or an elected official, just teaching them about planning and different tools and best practices related to planning.
Thank you all. Thank you all. So those are our specialists. And again, they work up and down the coast. They are not designated to any particular region. They just happen to live in regions, but that doesn't mean that they cannot go outside of those regions. Our more regionally based team are our agents who are also, again, tied to AgriLife. So they're very embedded within the community and community leadership as far as within the communities that they live. So we'll start out with the northernmost person of Nikki, who serves 2 counties, Chambers and Jefferson County. Nikki, are you available?
I'm here. I don't know how to do the video. I'm on my phone also, like Laura. I am in the northern part of the coast. I cover in Jefferson County. I do anything from youth education to helping with their shrimping and oyster industry to helping with our crawfish guys and any kind of coastal wetlands restoration or whatever they have me do. So that's what a generalist does. We wear many hats, not to mention when there is a disaster, we help with disaster recovery and response processes. So extension agents kind of cover many different areas.
And Nikki, perhaps if you don't mind, could you talk about how y'all work with county commissioners in disaster processes? Would you mind doing that really quickly?
Yeah, I don't mind. So during disasters, extension agents will sometimes actually work in the emergency operations center with our county judges. During Tropical Storm Imelda and Hurricane Laura and all of those, we were in the actual courthouse helping with the TDM or Texas Department of Emergency Management. So we kind of do response calls through them. After the hurricane, we work with their commissioners to do FEMA inspections and many different things that our county basically needs. It's basically whatever they need or whatever the disaster calls for is what we are called to do. So it could be many different things. I actually was in a Chinook helicopter throwing out hay to cattle through our marshes because of the 60 inches of rain we had during Imelda. So you just never know what we'll end up doing.
Nikki is very experienced in disaster response, being up in those northern counties. Julie, are you available?
Yes, I'm here. It's nice to be here with y'all. My name's Julie Massey. I work in the Galveston County area, and a lot of my work is centered on working with amazing Texas Master Naturalist volunteers, and they're involved in the Exploration Green project that you got to learn a little bit about earlier. But Master Naturalists are volunteers who are they are involved in a restoration, education, as well as monitoring projects, and work with schools and all different types of nonprofits to do habitat restoration, monitoring, and like in the schools right now, we're working a lot on marine debris. So, and then I'm also, like Nikki said, we're as agents generalists. So we may be dealing with helping communities with developing a new park or a pond, or just whatever the needs arise. So, but I really hope that if there's a way for us to work with you on your research, that you'll contact us, and we'll be happy to help out. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. John, are you available?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John O'Connell, and I serve Missouri County, just adjacent to Matagorda County and Galveston County to the north. As a county extension agent, I'm involved in many aspects of the county. One aspect is emergency management. So during one of our many flood events, we shelter small animals and livestock. I also coordinate the monofilament recovery and recycling. So that's a marine debris related program that's statewide, where we collect used fishing line. I am a K through 12 educator and also an educator of lifelong learners. I also work with landowners in pond management and aquatic weed control. So as you can see, those are just a few highlights, but I am heavily involved in all aspects of coastal and marine resource issues here in the county. So looking forward to working with some of you or all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Nicole, you're up.
Hey, hi, thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, y'all. I'm Nicole Pilson, the Matagorda County Marine Extension Agent. Like Nikki said, extension agents, we wear so many hats. Every day is different. You never know what you're gonna get called about. Sometimes it's about, I don't know, fish dying, and another day someone will call me about a cow. So I don't know what to tell you. Every day is a surprise, but it keeps you on your feet and it's tons of fun. One of the projects I'm working on this year includes cooking with seafood. I'm hoping to bring awareness to local seafood and how to find it, buy it, and cook it. This also includes providing education about wild harvest and farm-raised seafood. I'm also working with agencies, nonprofits, and local youth to help bring awareness to and garner support for the resources of Matagorda Bay and their importance in sustaining marine ecosystems, as well as sustaining tourism and industry in Matagorda County and beyond. That's it. Thanks for having me. I hope to work with some of y'all soon.
Thanks, Nicole. Is RJ available? RJ?
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't know if you were going to be able to make it today or not.
Yeah. My name is RJ Shelley. I'm the Calhoun County Marine Extension Agent. I work in Calhoun with the Calhoun County YMCA Summer Environmental Camp. That project is about a 10-week camp that's funded by the Matagorda Bay Mitigation Trust. I also do the boating safety series for Texas eSeaGrant, which gives young people the TPWD boater education permit, as well as some of the program will educate professional anglers, CPR, first aid, whatever else they need to do their job. And as a county agent, you know, I do whatever we need done. I do a lot of parks and wildlife permitting for county boat ramps, and host a lot of public hearings. One on the Matagorda Ship Channel dredging project last night. And then, you know, next week might be a Parks and Wildlife scoping meeting on flounder regulations. So nice to be here. Everyone have a nice day.
And I'd just like to say that RJ and Nicole do a lot of work on the Matagorda Bay mitigation programs that are ongoing right now. So Tony, certainly not least, Tony's been with Texas eSeaGrant, with AgriLife and Texas eSeaGrant for years and years. So we get to celebrate the last person with Tony.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've been with Texas eSeaGrant and AgriLife for, I guess, almost 39 years now. And I have 2 master naturalist chapters that I work with. I founded them, and I'm their advisor. I also, in Cameron County, I participate in emergency response, and we've had quite a bit of that lately with the fish kill and the sea turtle cold stun events. I also have a group called the Red Tide Rangers, and we respond to red tide events and other algal blooms. And we also cooperate with NOAA. We're their ground truth for the satellites, and we determine or they use us to determine what they're seeing via satellite along the coast through our sampling. And I also have another group called the Texas Coastal Naturalist, and they respond to also the sea turtle cold stuns, but also strandings of marine mammals. And lately we've been having a lot of pelicans grounded, flying over an area that eSeaGrant was involved in restoring, the Bahia Grande. And we have many of our coastal naturalists participate in rescuing these pelicans. And they were influential in getting TxDOT to look at what was going on there, and they actually changed the configuration of some of the barriers there, and we're still working on that.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, everybody. For researchers, you'll see that we just have an absolute vast knowledge base and historical base and network of people that we have on our team, as well as people that we work with. So all of these folks are available to you to collaborate with on your team, on your research projects. They are also maybe, I won't say they all are, but they might be available on other research projects that extend beyond the projects that Texas eSeaGrant supports. So if you need collaborative opportunities, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of these. Some of them, again, are county-based, so can't necessarily do research outside of their counties or do engagement at a grand level outside of their counties. But I just want you to know that they're available. They're an amazing team. Their knowledge base is extraordinary. I learn something from them every single time I talk to them. So they're just a phenomenal team. So please reach out to them. All of their information is on the website, and if you need further contact. So please reach out to them if there's anything that we can do to help support. Next up, I'm going to, we're going to highlight, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different projects across the team that have different types of integration of research and extension. So I'm going to start out with Walter Peacock, who has worked for multiple years on a business disruption study. And I'm going to let him go over that project and explain what he did and how it integrates research and extension. So take it away, Walter.
Hey, hi again, actually. So today I'm going to talk about the business disruption study, and what we are doing for this project is actually going out into the field and interviewing businesses and how they fared after disasters. The main disaster that we were trying to capture the data for is Hurricane Harvey. We wanted to see what if the businesses had insurance, if they were able to get assistance from the local governments, federal governments, and how long did it take for them to recover, if they recovered at all. What we then did was use this data that we collected and are developing a best practices handbook. Our idea is that we can try to figure out how, or the businesses that recovered, how they recovered, why were they successful, and create this best practices sheet or handbook to give out to our communities so that they can use this data and information to spread to the businesses that are in their communities, helping the new businesses or the current existing businesses survive and weather these natural disaster events. As a eSeaGrant specialist, how I helped is that I worked with the researchers to get in contact with local stakeholders that I am familiar with in the area. I helped them conduct interviews and distributed flyers and information to the communities or to the community stakeholders so that they could inform the communities about the research project and who we were and what we were doing in the community at that time. Again, if you're interested in working on a project and you are active in the Upper Coast or would like to have a liaison between you and our agents in the field, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. We're running a little behind time, so I'm going to speed ahead to Kate. Kate's going to talk to us about community planning and engagement.
Howdy. I'm not going to go over everything on the slide, but I wanted to put all the information on there just so that you guys could have it. There are several basic planning steps that are involved in most planning processes, including comprehensive plans, hazard mitigation plans, watershed plans, basically any kind of plan. Throughout these steps, we do a lot of outreach and public engagement. It's a really iterative process. We're always going back to the community to verify that our information, our conclusions, and our recommendations are valid and reflect the community's perspectives. Outreach and engagement creates a more inclusive vision for a plan or a project. It provides greater consensus or buy-in from the community. It also builds trust between the citizens, planners, researchers like yourselves, and the elected officials that must adopt a plan. The last box on the right gives an overview of the types of research that are incorporated into a comprehensive plan. The Texas eSeaGrant planning specialists have worked on 5 comp plans since 2017. Most of this research could be used in other types of plans as well. So we look at a lot of physical and social vulnerability. So we're asking questions like, where are the floodplains? What structures are at risk? What groups of people will need more assistance during a disaster? And what are some projections for things like water demand or sea level rise? All of this data is collected in the assess step, which is in the box on the left. And then a large portion of the planning process involves researching and discussing best management practices and policies that fit a particular community's circumstances. For coastal communities, these practices often relate to environmental conservation, hazard mitigation, building codes, economic diversification. I just named a few topics there. And I think that's all the time I have to speak. So thanks for having me speak, Cindy, and I look forward to working with any of you guys in the future. Thanks.
Excellent, Kate. Thanks. That was a great overview of what the CRC does. The next up is Ashley Venice. She's going to talk to us again about the early phase Baffin Bay watershed plan that we talked about a little bit earlier.
Thank you. Hi. So this is a project that was really a labor of love with Morgan Ayers and I. You saw her pretty face earlier. So this is certainly something we work very closely, and it's really using that integrative model that Cindy talked about earlier. We're trying to help the community get their voice heard, get their needs out there so that we can find research and resources to match that. So Baffin Bay contains tributaries and supports high recreational and commercial fishing and contains critical habitat. And so it's a very important economic driver and natural resource driver in the region. But observations by local led to research and awareness of some issues in the bay, including brown tide algal blooms and fish kills and impairments. So to further explore what and why of these findings, the Hart Research Institute, led by Dr. Michael Letts, conducted more research with the help of the local citizens. And I provided those key findings down there. So next slide. As a result of this type of research efforts, a stakeholder group was created to focus on these issues and have conversations around the needs of the bay. And it was clear that a watershed protection plan would be a great step because it would help to address that and also help to get money into the region. So these plans are locally driven though, and they need a really strong support from the community in order to be adopted, but we didn't have quite that knowledge of what support yet. So with funding support from TCEQ and EPA through the Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries program, Texas eSeaGrant was approved for a one-year project to do outreach and education with stakeholders in Baffin Bay. And it culminates in a final report that's going to provide resources to those living and working in the bay to assist in voluntary protection and restoration practices to improve the water quality. Next slide, last slide. To achieve the outreach and education, we organized 4 workshops, and we also organized a task force made up of stakeholders in the region with industry, agencies, researchers, residents, anyone who was very interested, who we felt could help us guide along this research. And the first component was of all these workshops was education, providing resources to the community. And the second component was listening and gathering feedback. And this feedback and input will help the team that's doing, it helped to acquire funds for a full watershed protection plan, which is starting this year, and we're going to be a part of that as well. But this feedback kind of helped to show that there is interest in the community to work on these issues. And once the watershed protection plan is adopted, we're not done. I know Morgan's already working on ideas for implementing projects in the region. And that's all I'm going to say. I look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you, Ashley. That was not an easy project to put in about 2 minutes. So that's a very long-term, huge, successful project.
Yeah, I'm a little over, but I tried.
No, you did great. It's a huge project. So thank you. All right, Laura, are you available or do we need to come back? I know she's on another call as well.
Nope, I'm here. We just wrapped up, so I'm good.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Thanks. So the project I'm going to talk about is a new project coming online, but is building on existing work that Texas eSeaGrant has been doing for decades now, actually. As Cindy mentioned earlier, a lot of the work that eSeaGrant has done over the years with, Tony Reisinger gets a lot of credit for a lot of this work as well. And he'll be working on this project with me and my predecessor, Gary Graham, working on implementing bycatch reduction devices in the shrimp fishery. And so through the Deepwater Horizons natural resource damage assessment, restoration plans were developed. And one of the things in the restoration plan, there's a significant amount of money set aside specifically for fish restoration. And one of the ways in which NOAA would like to do that is to continue to work on ever improving gear and technology that helps reduce bycatch in fisheries. And there's multiple fisheries that this is being addressed in, but this project is specifically addressing finfish bycatch in the shrimp fishery. And so, we've heard a lot about TEDs in the shrimp fishery and the success stories behind turtle excluder devices and bycatch reduction devices, what we refer to as birds, not the ones that fly in the air. But are also additional devices that a lot of people don't realize are also part of shrimpers' gear. And so NOAA approached Texas eSeaGrant and Louisiana eSeaGrant is a three-way partnership on this cooperative agreement because of our relationships with stakeholders, and really wanted to bring to this project not just NOAA scientists trying to design and develop gear, come up with ideas from the top down, but to incorporate industry in those ideas and to understand and utilize fishermen's knowledge in how to continue to improve these devices and improve their efficiency of their nets. So eSeaGrant's engagement in this project is, it's a multi-phase project over 6 years, actually. It's very extensive, but it starts from square one with developing a large stakeholder working group that's going to include net makers and shrimpers from various different fisheries within the shrimp fishery in the Gulf. Most people don't realize we target 3 different types of shrimp in the Gulf, and there are different characteristics and styles to each of those fisheries. Also, the geographic regions that some of the shrimpers work in have different conditions and different water bottoms. So there are different devices that work well in certain areas that don't work well in others. And bring them together with researchers and managers who have knowledge about fish behavior and other aspects of, the bycatch, and understand, hydrodynamics of nets and ways that we can make designs and technology that can help to create opportunities for fish to escape from these nets. And so we're developing stakeholder workshops right now. That'll be an integral part of looking at the new designs, and we're looking broadly across the world at trawls, different types of trawls and different types of bycatch reduction devices. The second stage will be to do real world training with the industry, or real world testing, so that we're not just trying this on one boat or trying it in a lab, but commercial shrimpers will actually be taking some of this gear out themselves to test out things like durability and costs and loss of shrimp product. Because if it excludes fish, but it also excludes a lot of shrimp, then nobody's going to adopt it. And then finally, once we have some designs that we really feel are successful, being able to take that and do hands-on dockside training to broadly adopt that across the fleet and encourage use of these bigger designs. So sorry, I probably rambled longer than I should have, but there we go.
Thank you. These are very integrated projects, and they're hard to explain in about 3 sentences. So thank you, Laura. Excellent overview. All right, and then we're going to hear from Alexis Sabine about recreational fisheries program that is in progress right now. So tell me when to go ahead, because I know yours builds.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. So you can just go ahead and click through, I think 5 times. We'll just get everything up there right at the start.
There you go.
Perfect, thank you so much. So hi again, everyone. I'm Alexis Sabine, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of one of our recreational fisheries projects that we have going on now, which is the Coastal Monitor Program. So this project came about because we realized that, like in many other states, a lot of the fishing guides here in Texas have been in their industry for decades. They've accumulated extensive experience in and on the water, which makes them uniquely qualified local experts in the things that are happening in their bay systems. However, their expertise is sometimes not incorporated into management strategies or research studies that are taking place. So our goal in this project is to document that traditional local knowledge of the recreational fishing industry, while at the same time collecting data on environmental trends affecting our Texas coastal areas. To do this, we assembled a small network of fishing guides who were interested in participating in the project as coastal monitors. These monitors are reporting their observations of any environmental or ecological changes that they've observed as having previously occurred or currently taking place in their particular area. The things that they can report on include changes in habitat or vegetation, changing shorelines, wildlife or biodiversity, water quality, and several more. Importantly, this project is being conducted in collaboration with key recreational fishery stakeholders along the Texas coast through a partnership with nonprofit organization Flatsworthy. Flatsworthy has been instrumental in brainstorming for this project and getting it off the ground, and we're happy to be collaborating with people in the industry. Based on the Coastal Monitor's insights through their reports, we will be able to prioritize and summarize the needs affecting these coastal communities. And our aim is to then share this information with the local and state natural resource managers and researchers. The goal is for these findings to influence the implementation of appropriate management responses and development of future research studies, ultimately giving the fishing industry a voice in influencing the work that happens around them. So that's just a brief overview of this project. My email address is up there in yellow. Please feel free to contact me if you're interested in doing any work with the recreational fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, all 5 of you, for taking the extra step to go over the projects that you all work on. I really appreciate it. That is all for me on the integration of research and extension. Please contact me if you have questions. You can contact me, or again, you can contact any of our extension team members if you have specific needs or interest in their specialty or regional areas. All of their information is listed on our website, and I believe this presentation will also be posted on the Texas eSeaGrant website as well. So Mia, I cede my 6 minutes back to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Texas eSeaGrant Extension Specialist and County Agent team. We are just, the wealth of knowledge is incredible. And again, we want you to integrate your research with extension and outreach as you are able to, and either with your own collaborators that you know of, or with our extension specialists. And so I think what I'm going to do here is I've got some questions that have come in for the full proposal process, but there was a question that Cindy might be able to better answer, but I did want to read about, one PI said that they are planning to work an extension specialist in our project. Do they need to provide a letter of support detailing their level of commitment to the project? And, Cindy, that might be something I can answer in that regard, where a letter of collaboration to support the effort that person would be making can be a level of commitment in that Texas eSeaGrant extension specialist's own letter of support But if you're bringing in more resources from Texas Sea Grant as a whole, for example, wanting to maybe add some items on a collaborating Texas Sea Grant extension specialist on your budget, whether it's supplies or travel, we cannot include personnel effort on your budget because we would in essence be funding ourselves. But working with you as you build your extension outreach and education program and your proposal narrative and your budget, if there's going to be a certain level of effort commitment that someone would be wanting to work with you on your proposal, then their letter of support outlining that, and you would also want to comment on that within your narrative. So I'm hoping that was.
So Mia, I think if I could just reiterate what you said, we cannot pay ourselves a salary on our projects that we fund within the this research competition. But if there are expenses related to travel or materials and supplies or things like that, then we would be able to recover those costs. But we will not charge an extension team salary on any of the work that we do within these biennial research competitions related to our extension team member support. I hope that's clear.
Correct. And there's another question regarding extension work, Cindy, that you might be able to help on. For extension work, do you prefer focusing on some specific community, region, or covering more? I think it really kind of goes back to your proposal's scope of work. I see Cindy nodding her head.
That's up to you. What do you need us to do? And we'll let you know, if you want us to go out and collect samples for your research and basically play, like a student worker role where they would go collect your data. That may not be within the realm of what we do, but if you want us to disseminate the research that you collect and generate, then that is more in the realm of what we do. So we can disseminate your information across our network very, very easily. But it just depends upon what you're asking. I can't answer that question definitively because it depends upon what you're wanting to do as to whether or not we can help, support it at a regional or Gulf-wide level.
And going a little further into that area, one of our PIs has asked, I have a question related to outcome-oriented research as measured against the identified quantitative performance measures. How important is funding graduate education? As our group is a private research company, we are not degree granting. We could partner with the university to work with a graduate student, but doing so would probably increase the costs. How should we balance the need for Sea Grant to support post-secondary students and project costs with general ease of conducting the work? If we show undergraduate engagement, example through internships, would that be sufficient? In addition to several other metrics like peer-reviewed publications, presentations, numbers of fishermen who modify practices using knowledge gained in fisheries sustainability. This PI is familiar with our reporting, but again, I think it's really one of the fourth focus area is environmental literacy, workforce development, STEM education support that we do report on. It's going to budgeting. Again, it goes back to your proposal scope of work. And whether it's that important to fund a graduate education, if you're not able to, then that doesn't necessarily mean that you would not be scored high. So just do what is best for your your business and how you're wanting to package your proposal. Is there anything else, Cindy, that you could? You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
You don't have to have a graduate student, scholarships or things like that. If you can include internships, that's wonderful. We should do that.
Undergraduate engagement through internships, yeah, that could be.
Yeah, it's not a requirement. That is not a requirement at all. But it's encouraged if you can do it, if it fits within your plan. But there's a lot of other ways you can integrate research and extension. It's not just student engagement.
And if you're not a degree granting entity, then don't be concerned. That would not be against you in any means at all. Another question. Will you consider the balance of different focus area goals when funding projects? Actually, I think that was one I had seen earlier, and I did respond that you would probably have a primary focus area goal that you're wanting to focus on with your research priorities selection, but some of the research priorities blend into a specific focus area goal, and it may blend to another focus area goal. So however, again, you want to structure your scope of work and your proposal to achieve those goals. If it's a balance and you can justify and support that, and I think that would be acceptable. Cindy, do you have any comments? Okay. Another question, could we add one co-PI for the full proposal? We're wanting you to keep the personnel that you have from your pre-proposal constant as much as you can. If you feel like there's one co-PI that needs to be to replace another that you had listed, that could be considered, but we want you to try to keep the personnel that you had from your pre-proposal the same. But if you submitted the pre-proposal as a lead PI only, and you didn't have a co-PI listed, if the scope of work has not changed significantly from what you proposed in your pre-proposal, it probably would be acceptable if you can justify that. But we don't want you to completely change things. And some dollar questions. If 50% is less than, this is regarding cost share, 50% cost share requirement, if it's less than 75 a year, example 50,000, the cost sharing part should be 50 or 75. So whatever your federal funds request, whatever you're requesting on your budget for Texas eSeaGrant to fund you, that dollar amount, multiply it times 50%, and that's what the cost share needs to be. So if you're going to be proposing a $150,000 annual budget, then 50% of that would be the $75,000 minimum. But if you're only proposing a $100,000 annual budget, then that 50% cost share requirement then would only be the 50. And let's see, another PI question regarding the structure. We're partnering or subcontracting with an NGO to work with us on the outreach component of our project. So you're actually going to have a subaward out to your collaborating partner. So they're asking, should we include the NGO lead as a co-PI? Well, yes, then that the lead for your subrecipient, that co-PI who's leading that portion of their scope of work that is going to be on your full proposal to allow you to achieve your scope of work on your full proposal, then yes, the NGO lead should be considered a co-PI. They go on to ask, is there a benefit to listing them as a co-PI rather than key personnel? I worry about increasing paperwork burden. That's understandable. If you're only having a collaborator and they're not a member, a key personnel member of your personnel team, then that would not apply. But since this NGO would actually be a subrecipient where you are funding them through your funds received by Texas eSeaGrant, then yes, that lead should be a co-PI on your project, and they would be a member of your key personnel team. And I hope everyone's getting these answers. I'm answering it before I click on answer log. So another cost share question: if a proposal requests 100,000 from eSeaGrant, it must demonstrate 50 for cost share match. Yes. If the lead institution would receive 50 on an annual basis from Texas eSeaGrant, and a subcontractor would receive the other 50, does the lead institution need to match 25 and the subcontractor match 25? Or can one of these institutions meet the total 50 match requirement? Is there a benefit to showing? Okay, so in answer to that question, if you have a subrecipient on your proposal budget who will be performing their scope of work to make your project successful, if the structure of the budget needs to be such that you would take on that cost share responsibility as the collaborating subrecipient might not be able to, that is acceptable. We just need to make sure that the amount you're requesting and funding and the cost share amount per year and in total meets that 50% cost share requirement. So if you're able to take on a portion, they can take on a lesser portion, or if you need to take on all of it, again, the lead institution and the lead PI is responsible for the full proposal. And so you need to make sure that your total dollars per year and for the total project over those 2 years have that 50% met, and it can be a partnership or you can take on that commitment if you so need to. Another question: is there a benefit to showing greater than 50% match? For instance, a $100,000 proposal request with $150,000 matching funds. We don't want you to commit more resources than you need to. In fact, at Texas A&M University, our Sponsored Research Services and Vice President Office for Research, VPR's office, highly advises and requires against uncommitted cost share. If the sponsor requires X amount for cost share and you commit more than what is required, that institution, you're legally binding that institution to the commitment of those additional cost share dollars when you propose your proposal, not at award time. So we want you to do what you can do and don't overcommit. So there's no benefit. Another question: our research involves dozens of undergraduate students who are enrolled in a laboratory course at the university. Fabulous. They are paying tuition, excuse me, and student fees to participate in the proposed research. Can we count their time, tuition, fees as matching funds? Absolutely. And that's, again, the easily trackable type of reportable cost share commitment costs, easily reportable through payroll effort, tuition. So document that whoever's actually covering those tuition and fees, they can be considered matching funds, yes. Another question: where to justify the addition of the Co-PI in the proposal, a separate document? Where to justify the addition? So this goes back to the original question of adding a co-PI when you didn't have, you didn't list the staff that you were proposing on your pre-proposal. I would just make sure that your full proposal is justifying the work and the personnel. And if that person needs to be a co-PI, if the pre-proposal scope of work is not changing, it could probably be acceptable. There isn't a separate document that you would need to add because you failed to add that co-PI. Or maybe you just have been able to find out that that co-PI might be able to be a part of your key personnel team. That's okay too, life happens, but just justify it in your full proposal. Another cost share question, would in-kind cost share be considered in kind? Example, teaching reduction, RA research assistant student support. In-kind cost share is allowed, but you've got to document it. You have to document it with the institutional letterhead, the value of that in-kind cost share support. Maybe it's, the teaching reduction, that portion that would not be hitting payroll for that educator's salary. Document it on your budget, document it in your budget justification, and document it in an institutional letter of support that provides that value of the cost share commitment. Question on budgeting, what is the IDC rate? The indirect cost rate, or really overhead, is what is needed to pay your institution's lights and overhead expenses that are indirect to the direct costs for you to actually perform the scope of work on your proposal. So where the institution that you are located at, it's actually the institution who is the applicant who is submitting the proposal with the lead PI. That institution's IDC rate with that institution's federally negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, your budget would be built with that institution's IDC rate. So your proposal administrator will help you with that budgeting question, and they will provide you that IDC rate information. And actually in eSeaGrant, in the budget data worksheet, you can change the IDC rate to be what your institution's rate is. And another question, and it's the last one for right now, except there's a couple of chats questions, I think. Regarding the question that I asked for the balance, I think what I want to ask is, when you decide which projects to fund, will you consider a balanced distribution for different research focuses? Well, when the technical review panel reviews all of the peer reviews and conducts their own review and has the panel discussion and ranks the proposals that are going to be encouraged to be funded, again, as you select the primary focus area goal, you might have a secondary, and that's perfectly fine. As it's meeting the research priorities outlined in the RFP, and you're showing in your project summary and in your narrative how the research priority that you've chosen will satisfy that focus area goal, or goals, plural. As long as you've been able to show that in your narrative, then that if it's a proposal that's reviewed and ranked and scored high, then it just be able to justify what you're wanting to propose. There isn't an exact one way or the other, whether you have to just select a primary focus area. You can do more than one, and that's what you're wanting to do, and that's fine, but work that into your narrative. Let's see. I thought there was a chat in IDC. There we go. Regarding cost share, would in-kind, okay, so you put that in the question and answer. What is the IDC rate? So it's, thanks so much for an awesome workshop. Well, thanks so much for being an awesome attendee. I'm glad you learned a lot today. We all have learned a lot about our program and what Texas wants us to fund over the next couple of years. But the IDC rate's going to be based on your institution. I think Texas A&M University's on-campus IDC rate is now 50.5%. And I think the off-campus is 26%. So whatever is your institution's IDC rate, if your proposal administrator is guiding you with the federally negotiated IDC rate agreement to perform the scope of work of the proposal for on-campus activities, doing research and labs, that sort of thing, then that more than likely will be your institution's full rate. If most of your work is going to actually be off campus and can be justified that you're working out in the coastal communities and more than 50% of that effort, maybe 75% of that effort can be justified that it is truly off-campus work, then an off-campus rate would be allowed per your institution's federally negotiated IDC rate agreement. So it's up to your institution, your proposal administrator, and their approval on how they're going to package your budget. With that, it's 4:03, gang. Thank you for participating. I think we had 44 attendees, excluding our team. So thank you, everyone. We will post the recording and our presentation documents on our webpage at the top of the webpage. And again, resources is down towards the bottom of the webpage to look at NEPA forms and the eSeaGrant instructions. And again, eSeaGrant will open March 24th. So Cindy, I guess we are ready to say goodbye to everyone. Good luck. Get your questions over to me in an email if you need anything, and any research priority questions, reach out to Dr. Plotkin.
We're here to help support as well. So if you have questions, you can reach out to me or go directly to the extension team. So thank y'all so much for your time today.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.